Hi, I'm Vanessa Riley. I'm going to teach you 4 ways to write the book of your heart through journaling. 4 techniques that are going to get you unstuck and get the ideas out and onto paper. So, without any further ado, the video.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for a writing workshop sponsored by the Cornelia T. Bailey Foundation. Vanessa Riley is an award-winning author of more than 20 books, which encompass historical fiction, historical romance, and historical mystery. Her novels showcase the hidden histories of Black women and women of color, emphasizing strong sisterhoods and dazzling multicultural communities, and have been praised by the AAMBC, Washington Post, New York Times, Entertainment Weekly, NPR, Publishers Weekly, Essence Magazine, and many others. Welcome, Vanessa. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Serena. And I am so excited to be here to talk with you guys today. I am a very passionate speaker and writer, and we're going to have fun today. And if you think that I just came here and I'm going to give you this really boring lecture, you're in the wrong spot because you're going to actually work today. That wasn't in the disclosure. You're going to actually work today. We're going to test out some techniques. And I'm very passionate that every person has a book locked up in them. And if we can figure out ways to get it out, to get it on paper, to be able to share with other people, that is to me the most important thing. Okay. So we are now at about 28 books. Number 29 will be Fire, Sword, and Sea. It's my next historical fiction, comes out in January. But I write historical fiction, historical romance, and historical mystery. Kind of a historical theme going on. But what I'm going to talk to you today can apply to nonfiction, fiction, of all sorts. It's what's inside of you, what you want to communicate to the world. That is the most important thing. All right, so today we're going to go through the basics of journaling because, everybody thinks they know what journaling is, but we're going to go and actually, define it. Then we're going to talk about how we can use this for generating story ideas. I'm going to go through 4/5 of my favorite techniques of journaling, where you're going to actually experiment with these different techniques. And then we're going to bring it all together. All right. And then, of course, parting thoughts on the process and the learnings that we're going to be having today. Now, don't freak out. I told you we're going to have exercises. So I would get paper and pencil or your lovely journal notebooks out because we're literally going to do some of the exercises today. Serena's going to help manage time. If there's something I am talking about and it's pressing, you've got to know right then and there, put it in the chat. And Serena will stop me because I can't see everything with the chat and folks that are going on. But when we do these exercises, there is no right or wrong answer. People often get stopped in being creative, in being able to write because they think it's got to be perfect. To give you just a little background of how I write, my books can be anywhere from 80 to 150,000 words. One time when Island Queen, which is, was GMA Buzz Pick, it's won all these different types of awards. When I really turned that thing in, it was like 200,000 words, and my editor was like, "Oh, you sent me 2 books." No, I just didn't know what I was doing. This is always a process of learning. But if you wait to have everything perfect, you will never finish your book. I usually write in what I call 3 waves. The first time I write a book, it's to get to the end of the book. That's the version that nobody will ever see. It is a hot freaking mess. There are grammatical errors. I've changed people's names in this draft. That's how bad this draft is. And it's really just focusing on what I call the goals of each of the characters to move them through. That second wave is where I start trying to make things make sense. I'm trying to clean up the grammar. I am trying to make sure That the white walls and the white sky and the white clothes and just putting the colors to it. And then on that third pass is where magic happens. So if you think you're going to sit down and write a perfect journal, a perfect article, a perfect biography, a perfect fictional work on that first pass, you might as well just stop because that's too much stress. And stress kills putting the words on paper. If you are consistent about writing every day, I am one of those. I will try and write at least 100 words every day. Um, or in my case, somewhere between 500 to 1,000 words. But if you write 100 words a day, every single day, by the end of the year, you actually will have a full novel, something that you could share with someone else. Um, when I say those 100 words, I'm not talking about good words. I'm just saying words on paper. And once again, that's why journaling is so important. It is getting these ideas unlocked from our brains and putting them on paper. Magic happens in editing. There are some people, they're probably uniquely gifted that could just, sit down and it's beautiful. I'm not one of those persons. I am a worker. And I think a lot of us, because it's not our natural state, we have to work towards it. So, once again, when we do these exercises, I want you to relax. There are no right or wrong answers. If you feel courageous, you could put it in the chat. If you feel really, really courageous and we're doing well on time management, we may ask a few of you to just give us your impressions of um, of what you thought about the exercise or what you learned. Okay. All right. So let's start with the basics because I think everybody has a concept of what journaling is, right? It is a record of experiences, ideas, reflections that's typically kept in private. It's almost like a diary. A diary when people use diaries, it is a personal their personal witness of what's going on in life. We are very fortunate to have Anne Frank's journal, to see what she was going through. Women typically we're too busy housekeeping, child rearing, working, etc. We don't write enough. And so there's particularly during these time frames, we're going to lose a lot of what is happening in the sense. So part of journaling or just keeping a diary is so that those after us can see what was going on and how we felt about it. There's a lot of experiences. So once again, with Anne's Frank, we get a whole perspective of someone hiding on the world that she knew is gone. Um, and that is a moment to really help us reflect on things. Journaling is similar, but it doesn't have to be necessarily about your life. It is about the lives of characters that you may be thinking of. It may be themes or arcs. We are living in turbulent times. So, your impression of what the world is going through, those are the kind of thoughts that you want to record, to reflect upon. And that's how we see change because what you're feeling now may be different than what you feel in 2 years, in 5 years, et cetera, et cetera. But it's usually private, personal. What we're thinking of is journaling for story ideas. So the intent is at some point we're going to share these. If you are writing a memoir and personal journaling are very similar because these are episodes of your life that you're recording, and you have to be comfortable with what you're putting on paper. Some people aren't. Some people have to wait a long distance before they can write about personal tragedy, personal successes, things that are going through. This is your journal. You must be comfortable in what you are writing, and it's still the same levels of personal autonomy as you would write in a diary or if you're writing journaling about your daily life. This is the sort of thing you may choose never to share what you put in this journal, but getting it out of your head and on paper is something that is extremely important to do. All right. Journaling is a safe time, but when you think about it for writing, it is playtime. You can write some crazy stuff in your journal. Doesn't necessarily mean that's what your characters are gonna do or that's what your book's about. But sometimes you gotta think crazy to free yourself up. If every novel plays it safe, we won't read those novels. We want to see people's lives that are different. Recently, I got addicted to watching a show I wasn't watching. So I'm on the thing that's now called X that I'm not supposed to be on, but it's a hot mess and I can't help myself. And so I started through Twitter watching Love Island. It's insane, right? I'm amongst friends. I will tell y'all I'm through Twitter watching that show, but it's crazy. It's not necessarily something I would write about. It's crazy. Think about your journal as that. You want people taking crazy journeys, testing the edges of humanity. You when you write, you should be fearless. You should be able to journal about anything. This is your private document. Until you choose to take what you've written and write it up and start getting it to a point where you want to publish it, you want to share it. It's yours. So you can write as crazy or as safe as you want to, but use the journal as a safe space. This is not something where I just journal it and so now I'm going to post it on Twitter, I'm going to post it on Facebook or Instagram. This is your stuff. What you choose to do with it tomorrow is what you choose to do with it tomorrow. This is your safe space. And when you feel safe and comfortable, your brain will allow you to go in places and stretch characters. Um, if you're when you're writing, this is just there. Often I will give you guys Vanessaisms, which are just random thoughts that have affected my writing. Kristen Higgins gave this wonderful speech at RWA. And she was, if you don't know Kristen Higgins, you gotta know Kristen Higgins. She writes women's fiction. And she says, write the most dangerous book you possibly can. So that's not playing it safe with your characters. If everything is safe and predictable, if you never put them in, harm's way or a difficult decision, there's a space for soft and fluffy. But even within soft and fluffy, there's got to be some tension. There's got to be something making you flip that page. If I can put the book away and never think about these people again, if that's one of my books, I've not done my job. I want you to be engaged. I want you to be so close to the story, feel for these people that I have to know what's going to happen on the next page. You do that by not playing it safe with the characters, sometimes not being predictable with the characters, or sometimes throwing them in situations that are crazy, insane, tense, not the beaten path. And journaling can help you get there because you're going to unchain yourself from strictly writing a certain way or thinking about things a certain way. You want tension. Tension, tension, tension will make you change the page. All right. Journaling is a slow process, right? Some people get up in the morning after their moment of inspiration or they're reading the Bible, they're praying. They have a moment of just pure peace with their coffee. For me, it's a latte. It's always right there. Um, it's a slow process. If you think you're gonna journal your whole book in one day, this is bad expectations. Um, it's meant to be slow. It's meant to give you clarity. It's meant to be deep. And as deep as you go is as deep as you want to go. And some of the methodologies we're going to talk about is how do we get to a deeper level. Okay. Oh, and I should say this. They're going to be all the important slides with lots of text on it. You're getting a copy of that. Okay. So if it, for me, I forgot. I'm one of those people. I'm like sitting here taking pictures of screens. Like you could still do that, but All the important slides with lots of text, you're going to get copies of that. Okay? Before we leave, you will get copies of that. So it's not one of those like 2 weeks later you're going to before we leave, I will have a link so you'll be able to download the slides. Um all right. So, I want you through these journaling exercises. You're going to try and tap into memories, tap into subconscious. Uh, it's kind of hard to divorce what you would personally do in a situation and the situation of your characters. You are not necessarily your characters. You inform your characters of the way they're going to be, but sometimes you will give them different belief systems. Sometimes, especially, people think about the hero, the villain has to be just as good. The best villains in the world believe they are absolutely right. And they believe that they are right in all the wrong things that they are doing. Their compass is a little shifted. And when you're not a criminal, when you are not having these mindset, when you're not a serial killer, you're not a stalker, you're not just a generally mean person, journaling in that person's point of view is incredibly freeing so that you can get that character right. We're going to talk about some of those today. All right. Story journaling is journaling with a purpose. This is once again a practice of recording your ideas. They could be questions that you may want to explore. It's a deep mindset about the characters. So you may sit down and just say, my character is Ellis, and um, she life crisis. She might be in school. You're going to just put all of that on page. And Ellis may change from being an adult in one version. She may be a YA character. Maybe you just love the name Ellis. We don't know. But you're free to change that story when you flip the page. When you get enough journaling and you feel you're really on to the story, that's when you really start writing. But the journaling is your prep work, your pre-work. And once again, it is your document. This can work if you're doing fiction, and I firmly believe it does nonfiction, because sometimes when I am thinking about writing an essay or an article, a nonfiction article, I use the same techniques. Um, More recently, I started doing podcasting. Um, and I kind of woke up around, I don't know, November 6th. The world was a little different, and I needed to record my thoughts so that I wouldn't go insane. So I was using my journaling to just what's bothering me? What do I see in this world? And then I turn those now into essays. But it starts with journaling. What is afflicting me? So these are tools I want you to be able to take away. You are going to be able to use in a lot of different aspects. Our words have power. They are in our brains. These are actions to free you. Okay? All right. So now we get to the good stuff, the tools for story journaling. All right. Very basic, right? Paper, journals, pens. Um, I am an advocate for colored markers, for being able to go back and highlight stuff. Let's see if I've got my trusty maybe. I used to have a drawer with all kind of markers. Ah, these are Sharpies, right? All different color Sharpies. These are to replace some of my others. They're permanent. Now, why would I use permanent markers in my journal? Because I don't want to go back and scratch things out. If I have a fresh idea, then I'm going to flip the page and put it down on another piece of paper. So Ellis in one version may be in blue and she's an adult. And I flip the page. I'm like, no, I really need to go back and visit her childhood. So now she's in pink and it's Ellis as a young person. But now I get the benefit of looking at those two perspectives. If you can't erase it, and I'm like general, general, like, okay, we're not perfect. The journal is not supposed to be perfect. So I will scribble through things on that page if I feel like I misspelled something. But it's my journal. If I misspell something, it's my journal. I'm not going to grade my journal. Uh, so, but it's your purposes. If you hate writing mistakes and you need to have something with erasers, colored pencils with erasers are good. I usually do pen, and I usually do colored highlighters or you say colored sharpies. I want a permanent record of whatever I'm thinking at that moment in time. Okay, and scraps of paper are good, but if you do scraps of paper, I three hold. So I also have. Let me see. I've gotten fancy sometimes. So sometimes after the fact, I'll bind her up. Um, you know, different things, different notebooks. Sometimes three holding is good because then you can add different things. I actually have one of these here, which I thought I had out, but I actually have scraps of fabric. So I clip scraps of almost like scrapbooking, but not quite. Where I will put the scraps of fabric in because I'm like, I want to remember this color or these patterns for this particular character. Now I will stretch here. I'll get to see some of my craziness here. This is my box of actual period fabrics. Um, so oftentimes, I'm also, I wouldn't say I'm a visual learner, but can y'all see this? You see how it changes? Just how the light, how the light is hitting it. That's inspiration for when somebody's walking through a ballroom in that in a dress made of that fabric or made with that type of material because you see how the light changes, and so you can play with the light and what another character may realize. The more you can touch it, that you feel leather. Well, seats are sometimes covered in leather, clothing is made of leather. Just feeling it gives you a sense and character. And so I will put little swatches in a journal so that I'll remember this person, leather is going to be very important to this person, or satin or taffeta, or her color is going to be this orange. So if I can add that orange back in, or think about why I chose orange, that's going in the journal. Okay. Let me put this back. Put it on the ground right now. All right. So those basic tools, right? I have friends who are sticky queens. They Farrah Rashawn actually is an amazing writer, and she is the sticky woman. She will sticky note journaling kind of thing. So every day she'll move stickies around, she'll write new notes on stickies, and she will put it everywhere. And she actually has a color coordinated system. So the pink will mean something different than blue, than green. I have other friends who, especially if they're doing where maybe it's a romance and they have the characters. Well, one character will be all of this color, the other character, and literally, boom. And so they have dedicated walls. So if you are a visual learner, pick a wall in your house, and this is my story. You can do this in notebooks. You could put the stickies all in a notebook. I have people who do the stickies, take a picture, print the picture, and then clear their wall up. Uh, it's recording, your thoughts. And sometimes stickies, because they're not permanent, gives people freedom to play. And that is just another concept I want to get across to you guys. Okay. All right. Now, for the tech lovers in us, because we love the techs, right? You can journal using Evernote. Evernote, I believe it comes on the phone, it comes on your desktop, and it's organized. So you have little, you can create tabs, you can create linked documents, you can store your pictures and whatnot. Um, for me, I love using my phone, right? So I don't know if I can show y'all. So there are folders. So the notepad function, the simple notepad function, I have social media ideas that I may think that may be journaling about. I have essay ideas in here. I've got the books that I'm working on in here. And whatever hits me for, remember I told you I'm trying to get probably about 1,000 words a day. I'll be in the line in the DMV. As long as you don't have to pay attention, you should be writing. If you're doing something where you don't have, so that's not, we're not writing in the car. Although I do have friends who dictate their books in the car. Okay. I'm not suggesting we do these things. However, to get your words out, we have technology, which is your friend. And, the voice recordings are so good that you can, it'll actually literally transcribe. My phone is better than Microsoft Word. So if I really want to get something out, I will dictate. I'll go into Notepad, pop up a note, and then I will literally sit here and it will transcribe what I am saying. So I will talk as a character. Ellis, new line. Ellis is moving into the room. Ellis decides that the room is too dark. Y'all get the point? The technology is here to help us, and we should be able to use it as much as possible. Um, this is Vanessaism, but I am a Scribner fanatic. So you saw my notepad. Oh, I was somebody just asked. I was using note. I was just using the note function on my phone. So if you go on your phone, you see there's something called on an Apple phone. It's called Notes. I'm pretty sure there's something like for Android that's very similar. And somehow the Apple dictation is like on point. So you saw I was literally dictating and it was typing out what I was saying. Although it may have said Alice is Ellis because I'm Southern, so it come Southern Caribbean, so it come out different. You may have to fix that, but we're not going for perfection. Remember, we're not going for perfection. Um, Evernote probably has a dictation function as well. I'm just saying we don't even have to uh, purchase new things if you have a phone. Your phones have this capability and they're perfecting them. So dictation, especially if you're folding the laundry, there's nothing like folding the laundry and doing a rote task and dictating your thoughts and ideas of the day. Okay. With Scribner, I use that. So my notepad has all of the different functions or different pieces. Scrivener's the book, right? But Scrivener also has my research in there. Scrivener has pictures in there. There's a whole bunch of extra things that go along with Scrivener. So I put it here because you could journal in Scrivener. Like if you just want to type and you want to get that, you could journal in Scrivener. I think the note function is probably better. It serves more that quick function. Scrivener, you have to sync issues are a whole nother thing. If we, ever want to have that conversation about writing in Scrivener, yeah, sync issues are a thing. Notepad, hard to screw up. Really hard to screw up in Notepad. So I will do a lot of things in Notepad, and then when I'm sitting at home in front of my computer, I will use Scrivener. But I do have friends who just use the Scrivener app, and they are doing what they need to do. I actually have a friend who wrote an entire book in Notepad, literally, and then just exported it, and that was the book, and traditionally published. So you can do a lot of things with the technology we have, and I just want to keep that clear. Okay, and then this is you. I've shown you a number of different ways. I bounce back and forth from putting it in a notebook, and literally I will print out notes and stick the pages in the notebook just so that I have the latest things. Um, I've done sticky methods. I'm not sticky is a little hard for me, but you give me a version of a notepad and going back and forth on an iPad or my phone, and I'm in happy heaven. Um, I had probably, not to date myself, but I did have. I remember going to college. I had the word processing typewriter. It had little weirdo discs and everything. I love that thing, and we had a great time until it died. Then I moved on to an Apple Mac, and it's been Apple and IBM going back and forth. But you, whatever's convenient, grab what's convenient. If it's sheets of paper, use sheets of paper. The goal is to get out of here into some form that you can go back and look at and move your writing process forward. Okay. All right. If there are any questions, because before we head into the methods, any general questions about what we just talked about of freeing yourself? Like I said, I'm slightly looking at the chat, very slightly. And I'm sure that Evernote does other languages too, but I'm not familiar with their dictation. I just know that my notepad is amazing. Do I journal more than one book idea? Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Literally, this year I've got another mystery that's coming out, murder or I've remember I told you I write a lot? Well, next year like 3 books are coming out, right? So we have my historical fiction comes out in January. That is Fire, Sword, and Sea. In June comes out the third book of a historical romance series called A Deal at Dawn, and that October, November-ish timeframe will be the fourth book in the Lady Worthing historical mystery series, and it's murder. It's the place where the Parliament is, but it's somewhere there, somewhere in London. So Murder Somewhere in London comes out that year. So literally, I have all 3 books going at the same time. And so do suggest different, if you do that, different notebooks. Have one dedicated for, like, if you've decided I am writing this book, then I would do a journal specifically for that book. Trying to mix the ideas of different books can get confusing because you will have breakthroughs and you want to be very clear what you're having a breakthrough on. So if you're in the formative stage and you don't know what you're writing, everything's in one journal, right? If we go back to my notepads, right? I don't know if y'all can see that, but you see there's Black Lady Pirates, which was Fire, Sword, and Sea. You should see Tidewalkers. You probably see A Deal at Dawn. I was working at different points all at the same time. But each folder is just about that book, just about those characters, so that I don't end up mixing stories. Does that make sense? Okay. Any last questions? We're going to head on to our next part. Excellent. All right. So the first method that we're going to talk about is the 5 whys. All right. 5 whys. Now, what exactly is 5 whys? 5 whys, you're going to be digging into the motivations. And, is anybody got children out there? You ever tell them to do something and they go, why? 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 Well, they have found that if you can go 5 whys, you actually figure out what the why really was. Why we're doing certain things. If you've ever read a book and a character does something, you're like, that character, that doesn't make any sense. From the person that I've been reading about, doesn't make any sense. Sometimes that can be, unless there are writers who will just give you a curve, a left ball curve. I prefer to have something in that person's buildup so that like, you don't know which way they're going to turn, But if they choose the dark side versus the light side, you knew there was something in their character that said, you know what, they could go that way. I could see it happening. And to get to that deeper level where the reader is wrestling with, would I make that same decision? You've got to get into the psyche of the problem. And by doing the five whys, you get to the psyche of the problem. All right. And literally, now sometimes is it always five whys? No. Sometimes you can get there in three. Sometimes you may take 10 whys to get there. But this is a great process to do it. You literally, you're taking a sheet of paper, you start out, and well, maybe we should go to an example. Let's do the example. All right. So five whys. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You see, they're kind of crazy. Five whys is the typical average. But you might, if you count the question mark as a why, but the question mark could be something different. Could be a how. Hows will pop up in your head when you do this process, but you write them down. You do not do them. You're focusing on why. How is how they accomplish something. You don't really care at this moment in time how person is going to Spain. You don't want to know, did they take the train? Did they take a plane? Did they take a boat? Those are hows. You want to know why. Why did they go to Spain? What's in Spain? Yada yada yada. Okay? So, here's a quick example. My character wants to become a doctor. Why? To help people. That sounds great. That sounds boring. Let's ask again. Why? Because their mother died of a treatable illness. Why? Because the hospital turned them away. Why? Because they were poor. And then the last final why? Because society didn't value their community. Think about that character and what that means. Um, the book that this process really helped me with is for a wager at midnight. This is set in the 1800s where women are not allowed to be doctors. And so you have Scarlett, who wants to be a doctor, who go to any lengths to learn about medicine. And I had to help. Why would a woman in this particular time frame, they're really only concerned about their economic status. They're concerned about who they are going to marry. That is the most important decision for a woman's life in the 1800s because women did not have the right to own property outright. Um, there are always exceptions. But in the early 1800s, it's very restrictive. And if you marry poorly, you're going to set up economic poverty for all of your descendants. So, why would a woman want to do, and a doctor is not even a great job at this point in time. In England, if you're a doctor, it means you actually touch the body, you're touching blood. That is disgusting. They want to be a physician, they want to be elevated, and they will instruct a doctor to do the surgery. They will not do the surgery themselves. All right. So that's a lot of extra knowledge that I just have, but that's all hows. Right? That's not the real why. So once again, when I'm looking at Scarlett, why does this woman who's middle class, who's a great candidate for to be a wife because of her education, etc., why does she want to be a doctor? And it's got to be more than to help people. New writers will be like, especially if they're writing romance, they want to be in love. No. I mean, that's great. That's not a real why. A real why is because they've never seen love before and they think that that is the key to happiness. But you keep asking, well, then why is that the key to happiness? Why? Go further and further and further until you get to something so deep that becomes maybe a theme of what you're writing. Society not valuing their community. Think about what that can do to a book. and all the other things that are happening in the book. Because I'm a person, I will mirror that in other ways. So you have Scarlett and her journey, but what's happening around her? You may see other women facing this, but it's just different. Someone trying to get admission to a ball, they can't go because society has deemed them not valuable. Uh, these are all great ways, but it's coming from those five whys. Okay. Look at another now. This is how I would actually do it in a journal. I take a draw a little circle, and Georgina is mad at the world. That's my opening statement. So I've got a character, and she is mad at the world. What does that mean? Why is she mad at the world? Right? Her sister's poor marriage has left the family destitute. That would be a good reason because now that she did poorly, that's going to reflect in that particular time frame. Once again, we're still 1800s for this example. Um, Now it's going to reflect on her. It's going to limit her ability to marry because the sister has done poorly. Right? Ask that why again. Why does that even matter? Okay, your sister jacked up her life, but what about me? That doesn't necessarily have anything to do with me. It probably could. Now, Georgina has to marry well to save the family. So we've gone from her just being mad to her having a reason to be mad, and then the implication of why this reason is bad, right? But still, we're not there at the end of the journey, right? Ask that why again. Georgina resents having to be in this position. And why is that important, or why does she feel this way? Georgina resents her sister. Think about that in the book, right? It goes from Georgina just being mad, Georgina, has to marry Will, but now you have another arc or dynamic for the story. What does that relationship look like every point in the story as Georgina now has to go on the marriage market, or Georgina has to do something she doesn't want to do, but she knows it's all her sister's fault? Think about that. The five whys gives you layers, and each one of these whys could show up somewhere in the story. We're not invalidating any of this. This is just giving you a deeper character mindset of what's going on in Georgina and how you can shape the story. Because look at the tension, right? I'm gonna know, like somewhere in the story we got to address what's happening with the family. Somewhere in the story we're gonna address what's gonna happen to who she may marry and the position, and then these two are resentment, but resentment towards that sister. So you got a stank attitude right here, but then stank towards the sister. That's gold, guys. I am telling you, that's emotional gold for a book. Because you can come for the romance, but people will stay for the family drama. I'm just saying, right? And this is a great way to do that. Okay. Oh, I was one Y missing. My bad. So now, not only is she mad at her sister, she is willing to court scandal to get even with the sister. So now you've got levels that you can just throw in this journey that goes beyond her normal character. She's not just mad at the sister, she is willing to do something that's against her character to get even. That's some good stuff right there. You can work with that. And using other techniques we're going to talk about is how you will blow these different pieces up. But this is a way, the five whys, and keep asking the whys. Like we could probably ask, you know, another why. But I think at this point, if five usually get you goodies that you're able to use throughout the story. And if you're curious of what happens, that's a gamble at sunset. This is Georgina's world. All right. It is exercise time. I need everybody. We're going to take about, let's say, 5 minutes. I need you to write a character and a problem, and then start this process of the 5 whys. Okay. So at 2:50, we're going to stop, but just play with it. Make up a character, or if you're working on something, character and a problem, or a statement of being. I said she was mad at the world, right? You can be as vague as you need to, because the why process will sharpen why. And these are not stuck in stone. These can be changed, but this is just a good first way of making your mind think about this character and what is making them tick. All right. Now I'll be quiet. I'm going to let you guys do this. We are back. Um, so with this exercise, it may not have been easy. And that is okay. Um, that's not necessarily supposed to be easy. And you can have a lot of whys that you may go back and say, you know what, that may not actually make sense for the person I'm building in this story. But you're supposed, it gives you a way of just thinking about it in a fresh way, in a new way. If you're stuck, sometimes thinking about that fifth why will help you, between 4 and 5, but will help you. What is really driving this sister? What is really driving this character? But once again, this is just one of the tools for journaling. And I've, notebooks. This is a great way, graphically engaging your story on a piece of paper. And then when you get stuck, you can go back and look at the circles, and you'll be like, you know what, maybe that wasn't quite it, or maybe I need to add something. All right. Now, mind mapping. Now, this is very similar, but different. Okay. Similar, but different, mind mapping. All right. It's visual brainstorming. And with this, you will be throwing out ideas. They don't necessarily need to be connected. And you are looking for unexpected things to happen, right? This is not linear writing, but sometimes people write, they go here, and then she goes here, and she goes here, and they get stuck. And so this is to make you break up the here, here, here. Now, once again, when you actually write it, people need to follow the story, right? But this is the creative part, the thinking part. All right. All right. This is very visual. So, like the last one where you had one set of bubbles, except it's pure chaos, because you're just going to be throwing buttons to bubbles out there that you're interested in, you think this character would be interested in, and then you go back and look for patterns or ways to describe things. So, we're going to start with a person in the center, and then we'll just throw out events that could happen, symbols, and we're going to look at connections. Let's do some examples and get started. So once again, we're going to, at the very center, the story idea or the character's name, and then we're going to draw branches or bubbles and then go back and connect the dots. All right. So let's start with a girl, Ellis, right? I don't know who Ellis is. I have a slight idea of who she is, and I'm just going to put some of those bubbles around Ellis, right? She wants freedom. Okay. Um, she's haunted by her father's disappearance. Ooh, right? Ooh. Have no connection yet. We're just throwing things out here. She got trust issues. A secret lover. A secret brother. A secret child. Y'all see none of these actually make sense, right? Y'all see that, right? We just throwing some ideas out here. This is mind mapping, right? Ellis wants freedom, how to buy this, trust issues, and a bunch of secrets. All right. Let's throw in that she hates her job. Once again, none of these necessarily connect. She needs a change. Okay. So I'm throwing out ideas. I'm throwing out concrete. I'm throwing out other potential people that she could be interacting with. So if everything made it on the in the story, that means she's got a father, a secret lover, a secret brother, a secret child. That's probably way too many. But at this moment in time, we're not eliminating anything yet. We're just anything I can think of. Let's throw it out here with Ellis. She wins $1 million. Okay, and we have a hand raise.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I can wait until you finish this section if you prefer. I had a question about the prompting.
Mm-hmm.
When you're doing the mind mapping, are you referencing the 5 whys and then from there you're saying what could the questions be, or you're taking Ellis like a blank slate and saying what could this character be like? Are you have to do the
Blank slate, total
five-
blank slate. So these are different techniques. So you could, in general, take where you are at the 5 whys and then do this, or you could just start here. So each of these techniques can work together, or you can start fresh from here. The goal is to get you writing, and some people really lock into the 5 whys process. Mind mapping is different, but you've already guessed they can work together. Okay. And that's an excellent question, and we will keep going. All right, so we got the $1 million win. Now, here's my little connection, right? I didn't this once freedom. I had nothing. I got nothing on that, right? But I said, what if she hates her job, so she needs a change, but she wins $1 million, but her father's disappeared. She got trust issues and a secret brother, right? That could make a whole different story, right? Ellis could have a secret lover who has trust issues that wins $1 million and the father disappeared. She may not have a father in the picture at all. It's how you want to connect these dots up. Okay. This is to completely, the only thing you're sure of when you do mind mapping is the name of this character. That's the only thing. Now, if you have done the 5 whys and you want to know more about Georgina, then Georgina's name is right here. And we know Georgina is she doesn't want to get married, right? Or she doesn't want to, she hates her sister. Well, the sister's bubble here is Lady, I think her name, Lady Hampton, which is her sister, would be a bubble. Potential marriage candidates, but as types. So it would be like the accountant, the tradesman, the duke. These are different potential marriage people that but they're more archetypes. So the duke would be a rich man with means to do anything he wants. The tradesman would be maybe he's a scoundrel, right? Um, you know, there may be somebody that has a secret dukedom. I don't know. You could play with these, right? But you're just throwing out things that just pop in your head, pop in your head. And then once you have the pages covered, you go back and say, okay, what is the most interesting combination here? So I could have said Ella's trust issues, right? I could have said Ella's freedom, but I really locked into Ella's hating her job. I'm not saying that's the right answer, but that to me that seemed pretty cool, right? Because Ellis could have trust issues and hate her job is the order of what we're going to experience first with Ellis. Or Ellis might need a change and hate her job, then wins the $1 million. So it's like you're playing with combinations. No answer is right, but what excites you to write that story? For me, when you get to this $1 million win, that's a story all to itself. So I have a friend, Sharon Cooper. She wrote about a young lady who's a secretary who wins $1 million. She hates her job, but she likes her boss. And it's like a whole like levels of foolery of what could potentially happen there. Um, Ellis, we could have said Ellis with the secret lover, right? But she needs a change. But she don't want it to be secret no more. I don't know. You line these up, and then you sit back and say, okay, what kind of story can I make with this? What kind of sentence, or like if I was going to write this into a paragraph, what would that look like? I have these bubbles. This is mind mapping. So it's a fresh take, especially if you're stuck. This is great if you're stuck. So let's say you've done the 5 whys, you know who this person is, or you have an idea who this person is. You just start popping bubbles that could potentially go along with the whys that you've already done. That's a great way to use the two in link up. But these are all separate. These are all separate, right? All separate techniques, but you can use them together. Does that make sense, everybody? Mind mapping is, to me, the hardest one because there's an element of random in it, but you need random to be unstuck. So if you're stuck on an idea, this is a great way to do it. And then do on different pages. So you start with this version of Ellis. You can have a completely different version of Ellis. Let's say she loves her job. What happens if she loves her job? What if her dad is like, it's her mother? Like maybe her mom is around. You can play with different versions of what Ellis looks like. And looks like as in what is her world? What are the bubbles? This is random. You throw out whatever is the first things in your head that could make the story interesting or complicate the story. Interesting, complicate the story. Right? Now, I will tell you there is too much. Like she can't have a secret brother, secret child, and a secret lover. That will be too much. Right? But we don't judge at this moment in time. That's something you'll figure out later when you start writing. That's a bridge too far. But it's out there because if you want a component of some shocker, secret something is always a shocker element. Secret sibling, secret, not knowing who their father is, those are always little elements. But this is random. I want to get that through. These are random ideas that you just throw on the page and then you take a breath, maybe get up, get some coffee, and then you go back and say, okay, what is the most interesting combination of these bubbles? That's mind mapping. Okay. So now let's take 5 minutes. I want you to do the same thing. You can take your 5 whys person and do this. But I want you to take 5 minutes and, well, actually 4 minutes because we're going to do this 3:05 or 3 minutes because now it's 3:02. 3 minutes and let's go. It's okay. All right. If this seemed hard, it can be. It's free association. Like I'm a writer, but I'm also an engineer. This is hard, this just random throwing out of things. But if you are stuck, this is great and freeing. And once again, you're going to throw problems on this bubble, goals, state of mind, everything, risks. And then you take a moment and you connect the dots. What is going to be the most interesting story I can get out of these dots? Okay. There is something called MindNode. It's an actual program to help with this. When I was writing Murder in Berkeley Square, I am a big Agatha Christie person. And then there were none is one of my favorites. You get murder stuck on an island. Well, they're in London. That's not exactly an island. Um, the history of And Then There of None is insane. I, yeah, I'm just gonna leave it that way. The history of this book, it was titled Some Very Bad Things before, and it's actually based on a children's rhyme. So, children being taught you know, just okay, let's go there. So the original name of the book was 10 Little Inn Boys. Y'all know what inn I'm talking about. Because it was a children's rhyme telling you the children what to do with an escaped slave. And Agatha Christie originally named the book that. Apparently, there was an uproar, so it was changed, and they thought it would be better to call it 10 Little Indian. Well, that didn't last. And so it was renamed, I think, in the 60s to, and then there were none. Um, Knowing that history intrigued me on how I could utilize this story more. So the history was very interesting. How can I use this story of a poem to showcase how everybody on an island or some sort of isolated place deserved to die? Um, that was pretty cool, right? And then, I've got the there's characters in the books. There's Lady Worthing's. Can I use this as an opportunity to talk about more of her backstory, the magistrate's backstory, and one of her frenemies' backstory, Henderson? And of course, once again, Agatha Christie, I don't know if y'all know, got mad at her husband because he was having an affair, which, I think she's entitled to be mad at. But then she disappeared like for a couple of days, and people thought the husband offed her. I mean, it was a very interesting thing. Could I use any of that in this story? I stayed and focused on the rhyme. I couldn't get to the island, so there were going to be it's going to be Berkeley Square, which this is a fancy neighborhood in London. But I put it in a snowstorm so they could be isolated that way. They can't go anywhere, they're all snowed in. And I took the offensive origin of this child rhyme and said, hey, some of these people own plantations. What if before the rebels attacked the plantations, they had a rhyme to freak Massa out? So it became 10 little or 8 little Grand Blancs. And I wrote that central core. So you have these rich guys sitting around and they have a poem and they're going to die based on who they are in the story in the poem. Very similar to And Then There Will Not. So that's Murder in Berkeley Square. So this one is abstract. Using this tool was, I think, doing the bubbles in your journal is so much easier. This tool was a little weird to figure out. I will be very honest in that. But if you like tools and want the lines and the colors, etc., it's MindNote is a great thing to use. Me personally, colored pencils or colored ink pens, and literally sitting there in my journal would be a much stronger way to do this. Okay. Okay. Here's another technique. So once again, I've given you techniques. Wash those out your brain. We look at the core story questions. It's another technique. Okay. Now, these are questions when we think more about characters and arcs. Every person has a goal, no matter what character they are in your book. Every one of them needs to have a goal. Every one of the people, even minor characters, has to have a belief system. They have to have relationships. And in my personal favorite, they have to have a lie. Now, what do I mean by this? Goals are tangible things, right? If I want a job, then I can measure if I don't have the job, if I do have the job. And I can increment in, okay, I put out a certain number of interviews, or I put out a number of applications, etc. You can track where somebody is on that goal. If somebody wants to become a partner in a firm, you can track how they're going about getting this goal. But it's very much, did I accomplish the goal? Did I not accomplish the goal? But it's measurable. So being in love is not a goal. It's hard to measure. I'm this much in love. No, I'm this. No, you need a tangible thing when I'm talking about this. So when you're looking at your characters, they need goals. So literally, I will have a piece of paper and I'm like, here are the goals for Ellis. Boom, 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 boom. And then I look at those and I'm like, okay, which ones of these feel right for Ellis? And the feeling is very subjective. What feels right for Ellis? And are these things I can measure? So oftentimes in a book, they're like we call subplots. So even in a romance where the goal is for two characters to fall in love and happy ever for now or happy ever for after, there's got to be other stuff going on in the book. And goals give great ticking time bombs. Like if my goal is to get a job in New York, but I live in California, and I just met this guy, and you know sooner or later she's gonna get that job, you got a ticking time bomb that the reader is like, okay, when is that gonna happen? When is that gonna it's a thriller. And you've got 48 hours to find such and such or the world gets destroyed. Well, you got a ticking time bomb, right? Goals help you with the ticking time bombs. Or that's a ticking time bomb is a bonus of having a real goal. A real goal. And real goals are something that have metrics or are measurable. If you can't measure it, it's not a goal. It's a nice to have. It's nice to have love. It's nice to be in love. Very hard to measure. It's too subjective. So these are no longer, I would say, subjective to be a goal. So it is, I'm 25% accomplished with this. You can literally measure it. That makes a goal. Beliefs are different. This is every character, including your villains, has a belief structure. This could be faith-based. This could be their viewpoint of the world. Um, it, it and there's no judgment when you come up with the belief system. So you could have a character who believes in something that you personally would never believe in. You're not endorsing the belief. That is just the belief of this character because that's going to shape their responses. If you have a crisis and it's a person of faith, they're going to pray. They're going to ask for counsel. They may go to their pastor. These are things somebody that has this belief system will do it. If the person is a naturalist, they will go, problem happens, they're going to go to nature. They're going to do things that align to their belief system. So that's why it's important to understand what your characters believe, right? Relationships. Back in the day, there used to be a series of books where the you're not like anybody else. You have isolated heroine, and she's so different. Don't isolate, folks. People got to do life. People are looking at books for just ways of surviving. They're they should have relationships. So, brother relationships, mother, daughter, sister, brother, friends, sister friends, whatever that may be, a dog. You could, but what are they? Lady Worthing, she's got Teacup, which is this, cute little dog that loves bacon. These, what are the what are the relationships? And every one of them is important. Later on, you might say some of these are toxic relationships, some of these got to be broken, but there's no judgment at this moment in time. This is what are these relationships? Because they help define our character. If Ellis is a follower instead of a leader, well, then she's going to have leader type people in her life trying to help control or dictate what she's going to do. And eventually, overcoming that and becoming the leader that's within her is going to be part. So, once again, knowing who's in her life. Now, the most interesting to me is the lie. I firmly believe every human being grows up with a lie, something that is internalized, and you have to overcome it. You have to be healed of it. So one of the things when I was very young, I think I did something really stupid, and my mom, she's talking to I think one of my aunties, and she's like, I can't believe my boys are gonna be smart and my girl's gonna be dumb, right? She didn't mean it like that as it comes out, but it's one of those things as a kid you hear it, girls are dumb. And so even when you have successes, you hear a success for a girl. That's good enough for a girl. And until you get healed of that, every time somebody gives you a compliment, you see it through this lens. So if somebody has body issues, they get complimented. They not necessarily. There's almost like two conversations can potentially go on: the actual one, and then what they heard. The lie is your model to do that. The lie doesn't. is you sometimes looked at as the internal work that a character needs to do, right? So goals, beliefs, relationships, and the big lie. Um, Now this is just a side note. I use this structure often, and I often think beginning, middle, and end. Because the goals at the beginning, there's been some sort of change by the middle of the book, and then there's resolution at the end. So belief systems can change, they can increase, decrease, they could be eliminated. But what is that at the end? And how does that change through it? Relationships can start somewhere great, bad, whatever, but by the end of the book, they could be stronger or they could have ended. And then, of course, the big lie, are they healed or did they double down? All of these things are in that. I think we have a question. Or is that, no, that's me. Okay. All right. So when you think about that goal, what are they trying to do? Put a why in there. Why are they trying to do it? Why is it important to them? A timeline. A goal has to have a timeline. And then you could do a how. How do they think they should accomplish that? Now, that's not necessarily something I journal all at the same time. I really stick when journaling to that goal. But when I go back and revisit what I've journaling, those are the questions. I gave you a little extra. You're really just thinking about the main character's goal, but those are some of the extras when I am trying to take what I've journaled and make it into a story. All right. So I believe in giving y'all more information than you really ever want. That's what I do. Once again, that belief system, the relationships, family, they could be blood, they could be found family, they could be a dog, cat, bird. What are the relationships that are central to this person's life? And then, of course, what is the big lie? All right. Let's look at some. All right, go back to our girl, Georgina, right? Her goal is, well, gets a little deeper into the book, but when you're in the book, the Duke, who's been visiting their family for a full year, he's been helping to try and right their circumstances, he's disappeared. She wants to go find him. So it's a very simple goal. Very, very simple goal. She wants to find the Duke. So we can get that goal done. So when you write the goals out, there can be the big goals, like I have to get married to solve my family's finances, which is, you either are married or you aren't, or you could be in stages of being engaged, etc. But this is a minor goal, so this can work for big goals, little goals. How does she actually go about this? She takes the family carriage, so that's the first action of how she thinks she's going to do this. And she's literally going to go in the middle of the day without an invitation, which for this particular time frame, that's all levels of taboo right there, right? But that's what I want you to take away from this is, what is that goal? How is she thinking about it? And in these other things, all right? The belief. Georgia believes women should have more choices. This is going against society, right? Very simple. This is a belief. Relationships. I already told you the big one. She is mad at her sister. But I could line this out. She's got several sisters. She's got her sister Scarlett. She's got allegedly a younger sister. I said allegedly, right? But anyway, she's got friends. Line out her world. And then, of course, here is her lie. Deep down, she's the second oldest. Now this responsibility on saving her family is on her. A lot of attention is on her. Georgie thinks that if she shines, she's going to be proved that she's not worthy. So sometimes you go and you do a little bit, there's books on psychology of character sets and things like that. Second child, middle child syndromes are real. Those are dynamics that you can utilize when you're writing about characters. So knowing where they are in their family structure, extremely important. There's the oldest daughter has a different journey than than the baby daughter, the baby sister. And the middles, oh, they got a different journey altogether. And there could be ones of jealousy, there could be ones of feeling excluded, all kind of levels of tension, but you pick some. So some, before I settled on this, I had a line of things that she could have had a lie about. This is the one I settled on that worked the best for the story I was trying to tell. Okay. Now, Island Queen has a lot of characters. And I told you this is something I do for every one of them because if, okay, when people, when you're reading a book and they say the waitress, yada, yada, yada. Early in my journey, I thought I had to name all these people. Like, it's Mary Sue the waitress. No, when you name a character, this is Vanessa's, you're telling the reader they have to pay attention to that character. And so when you never see this character again, I'm upset. You made me stick this person's name in my head for no reason. I want her to come back and be a serial killer. If you make me know that waitress, there's got to be a reason you're naming it. Otherwise, it's just the waitress went and got it, right? Because that's not germane to the story, and there's only so much pieces of information that a busy reader is going to keep in their head, right? But for key secondary characters, you've got to know who they are. Sometimes stories will fall flat because there's all this great dynamics on the two main characters or the main character, and not enough on the other ones. My approach, everybody's a mirror of something. They're a mirror or they are a problem of something. So if you do the same type of analysis, these questions to each one of them, you're going to have something to play with whenever that person shows up. So there's a character in Island Queen called Nicholas. Nicholas is the main character, Dorothy Kerman Thomas, real woman. Um, she was born enslaved in Montserrat, and she literally buys her freedom and the freedom of her family, and goes on to be one of the richest women in the Caribbean. She has an affair with Prince William. That's a whole nother story. Future King William the Fourth. Hot mess, guys. But it was fascinating doing lots and lots of research to find her life and to do justice by her life. But one of the characters in the book is her half brother. His name is Nicholas. I need to know what Nicholas's goals are because he shows it, particularly in the beginning of the book. He's there in the journey. Uh, so rich, well traveled. He may even want to be governor of the islands, right? His relationships, you got the mother, the dad, potentially down the road, there's lawyers. He's got half sisters. Dorothy's a half sister. There's another half sister. Um, Beliefs and a lie, right? So, belief system. During this time frame, particularly in Montserrat, he could be Catholic, he could be Anglican. Now, that all sounds like the same thing. No, there are differences. And, at different points in time, Catholics couldn't hold office. Catholics were, they definitely couldn't, certain times couldn't be peers. So titles and those types of things are an issue. He believed, supremacy, that there was a master race and that that he should be entitled to own slaves. He did not believe in equality. He was definitely not an abolitionist. And because his half sister Dorothy is enslaved, you can imagine the view he has of this woman and the anger because they share a dad. Every time he sees the dad favor Dorothy. All right. I wrote down several. Now, someone asked, can there be more than one lie? There can be, but there's always a primary lie. And for Nicholas, you know, like let's look at the example. He believes he's owed things because of who he is. He believes being rich is the only way to prove himself. And abuse shows superiority. Those are three lies that are very similar. Very similar. Um, but I settled on that he's owed things. And that's why he's gets incredibly angry every time the dad favors Dorothy. He believes he's owed all that attention and Dorothy is nothing. So when he sees Dorothy excel at anything, he gets incredibly upset. Why is she excelling at this, particularly mathematics, and he's not? Um, now off the record, there Nicholas is described. His actions are documented. I brought those instances to life, um, but in a safe way because there is sibling violence, but because I understand my readers and I don't like trauma on the screen, you don't see trauma. But just to be clear, this is Nicholas. Nicholas is not a good guy. And he wanted all these things, but his primary thing was he wanted to be rich because he wanted power. He thought he was owed power, and that's how he acted in all his relationships. Um, so the ones I settled on, he thinks he's owed his father's love and respect, and the lack of it, or even just a little bit, he thinks that means he's worthless. So he begins to act up even more, right? So that's the lie you can helps in writing his reactions to any time he sees Dorothy being successful. Um, you know, his belief is he's the only one that's worthy. No one else is. And once again, here are his relationships. They share a father. He wants the dad's respect. He despises Dorothy and Kitty, his half sisters. And that's the state at the beginning. Now, I'm also showing you the state here in the middle. He wants to run a plantation, so being governor of the island wasn't his goal. Um, the father leaves him in charge, and he abuses Dorothy. He wants to humble her. And as a note, Dorothy outsmarts him and is able to escape. But those are things you see on the page. The tension between them, the sibling rivalries, sibling dynamics, and then just the there's a big scene when Dorothy is going for her manumission. Manumission is when she becomes freed, and everything she's leaving this life of where she's got money, she's taking her family, she's at the manumissions table, and I thought, what would be the one thing that would ruin that day for her? Nicholas showing up. So even though I don't have record of Nicholas being there, because all you have is just the legal documents of when it was signed, I created a scene where he is there. So that is a mirror to her past. And he's trying to oppose her from signing on the dotted line and becoming legally free. So you can imagine the tension moment and then also that moment of victory when she is declared free and her family is declared free. And there's not a thing Nicholas can do to stop her. That's how I use this process. And literally, I do beginning, middle, and end for every character. Um, you know, he didn't change his lie. He was fairly consistent. Sometimes there is a change in lie, but he's not a main character. So you don't, his purpose is to serve that lens. There are times where somebody will change, but that's typically the main characters. Dorothy's the main character. What she believes is going to change. But I wanted to show y'all an example for a secondary character. He's not exactly a minor character because he shapes definite steps in her path, but this is what you do for a secondary character. All right. All right. Okay. Time for an exercise. I want you to take one of it could be the same one you've been working on today. Somebody new. I want you to write their names down. Then I want you in your journal. Goals. Give me a list of goals. You don't have to put on timing and how it's measured, but that's just something to consider so that you'll know that's a real goal. List out possible belief systems. At this moment in time, primarily at the beginning of the book, what are the relationship structures? Do they have friends? List them out. Do they have pets? And then a list of lies. And once again, typically they could have several lies, but there's one prominent one that's going to be that'll overshadow or absorb the others. What's that lie? And then when you have that list, you will go back and you'll circle what feels right for this character. And I often look at mirrors. I like mirrors in characters. People that approach the same problem, but from different vantage points and different views. So sometimes I will choose that lie structure so it mirrors the challenge that the main character is having, so that you get that extra bit of tension because they're coming at the same problem. Because Dorothy wanted respect as well. Dorothy wants respect. He thinks he's owed respect. When you get in a situation where they're both in the same room, what does that look like? Right? So let us start. And I'm going to give you to 3:37. So 5 minutes. Well, 4 minutes now. 3:30, 3:37. To do this. Goals, relationship, lies, or belief system. Goals, belief system, relationships, and lies. Starting now. 4 minutes. Yeah, we've got 1 minute, and all right. This is hard. And so this is something that you may just take one day and just my journaling time frame. Today, I'm going to spend on just working on what potential goals character X can have. The next day, beliefs. Next day, relationships. Next day, the lies. Then I would take a moment and sit back and look at all of these 4 panels together. Who is my character? The version that I'm envisioning. This goal makes sense. I think I could work a lot with this. These relationships. This is the belief system that should match. And sometimes, like, I'm because I've done a lot of research, the differences between being Anglican and Catholic, knowing what that is. You may have to go back and do more research, right? And that is okay. That's part of the process. But having it on paper, this is going to get the juices going. Once again, what is, goal? What does my character want? Relationships. Who matters? And potential who could betray them, right? Because we didn't. Some of these relationships can be toxic, you know, and you could change it in your head. But as you start to write, these are just things to think about. Their world system of beliefs. What do they believe? And then the lie. What do they cling to that has unresolved healing? That shapes how they look at the world. And remember, a lie is a lie. It is wrong. And that's what's shaping them. All right. Now, the last method is letters. All right, letters. Journaling. This, if you're a journaling person, letters should be really nice for you, right? So this is the character. Typically, I start with the main character. And it could be the perspective of their younger self, what kind of advice they would give to their younger self. They could, I haven't done it, but I have friends who've done, they write their enemies. Like, what would they confess to? What do they hate about their enemies and whatnot? It's all up to you. But you're using this to kind of um, think about hidden fears, desires, and even sometimes surprising truths. Like, what shocking thing would be found in this letter? Especially a retrospective. I love you're writing from I've already gone through, I've already gone over. And now I'm writing to that younger person, the younger version of me that hasn't gone through this yet. What am I saying? Right? So, what you usually do is you choose a main character, or choose, like I start with the main characters, but once again, I have never gone all the way down to the secondaries. But for your main characters, this I think is a really good tool. Um, and you're set at different stages of life, right? So the things you want to consider, there's a date. This letter has a date. And that date is typically significant because it's before things have changed or after things have changed. So it's before anticipation of the way life is going to go. After I have survived something the way life went. And I'm writing to my younger self. Okay. So, three things I always consider before writing this is the emotional state. Your emotional state before things happen and after are two different states of mind. Because, after you could be, whoo, I'm glad I survived, or whoo, I'm bitter, or whoo, I'm joyful. Those are three very different states of based on what happened. And the emotional state before. If you want a character that's completely blindsided, this could be the day before her wedding. And she's writing what she thinks the future is going to be when she says, I do. What she doesn't know is that she's going to be stood up at the altar. Right? But that emotional state before all that goes down, what is that? The tone of the letter. Is she upbeat? I'm going to be marrying this person. Or is she a little worried? Maybe she's heard rumors. Maybe she's not sure. Maybe once again, if she's marrying, is a historical romance. We love marriages of convenience, right? It could be a marriage of. What's the tone? And then once again, in this letter, I need for you to seed something. So it's either, the doubts about what's about to happen, or I'm on the other side, and you're kind of giving hints of what you're going to go through, but you're going to survive it, kind of thing. So once again, it's your perspective of where you decide you are going to position the character when they're writing to their younger selves, before or after. So this is Ellis, present day, to herself before the world changes. Her emotional state is she is restless. She's in accounting. That's where she's working. Her tone is hopeful and maybe a little reflective. And then there's the hints of something's up. The father, the trust issue, desire, joy. I may not know exactly, but I kind of give myself a list. And once again, if I've used my other techniques, I've got a list to draw from of the potential things that could happen. Right? So here's her letter. Present day. I hope you'll finally found a way to live beyond the spreadsheets. So once again, we're hinting she's an accountant, so there's little bits of here. Where's she at? She's buried in numbers. She keeps wondering if there's more to life than balancing columns. Oh, I was in the zone of accounting. Sometimes you read stuff, it's like, boy, that's real corny. She's giving advice. Promise me you're not just gonna work for security, but for joy. She's saying hold close to dad, right? In the moments. And then she's telling her not to be afraid. So this is a good mindset of who she is before everything happens. In our setup, once again, her emotional state, she's restless. She's longing for more. She's telling her younger self, you know, go for more, do for more. The hints of something happening, hold close to dad. Right? So once again, this is the present day version of Ellis. Three things: emotional state, the tone, and the hints. Those are three things when you write the letter. Okay. So now, this is 5 years later. The world has changed. Her emotional state is jaded. Her tone, she's got scars. She's not innocent anymore. The resolution recedes. She acknowledges her struggle, the new directions in her life, and now she's found strength in herself. All right. You don't have to have all these things. You could just choose one, but then you could write a different letter and say, okay, what does it look like if she's no longer hopeful, etc. I'm just giving you a set for when I was playing with this structure. All right. So then, boom, you were right to long for more than balance sheets. She walked away from her job. Money can't buy peace. Dad is gone. I found my brother, so I put that secret brother thing in there. And she doesn't trust easily anymore. With scars and strength, Ellis. So you think about those two letters and how different they are from the same person. Same, before the world changes, after the world changes. You have a mini snapshot of the arc that Ellis is going to have to go on in this story. You've got pieces of tension, the hoping, the knowing in her heart that she's meant for more. And now figuring out something happens. I should have highlighted the $1,000,000 didn't solve everything. Right? And once again, you guys these are in, I have those notes. So you're going to have these notes, these letters, so you can analyze them together. Because I should have put, hindsight, I should have put both of them together so you can kind of see them on the same slide. So this is one of those things where sometimes I will print things out and stick them in my journal. So they're on opposing pages so you can see them as you're thinking about things. But you can see different stages of life. Now, we can take 2 minutes because I want to leave time for you guys to be able to ask questions. Okay? So 2 minutes, just write me 1 or 2 sentences of some character who has a harsh tone and it's a bitter emotional state. And the hints are you're about to make a mistake. So this is after something has happened. So we'll just at 49 I will start again. Okay. All right. Normally you are taking your time when you do these because you want to think it through. You want to feel you are this character. So the more details you know about the tone, the the state, and the hints. So doing some of the other exercises that we've done kind of gives you a nice little playground to play in. But this tone tells you, you know, who they are. And so one version of this letter might be the harsh tone. Another version of this letter might be an optimistic tone. And then you kind of decide which one feels better for the character. And better not mean more hopeful, but feels like this is the character I'm envisioning in my head. That is that is the answer. Not the you always want a happy character. The only trope or only genre that requires a happy ever for now or happy ever after is romance. In a mystery, you have to find out who did it. In a thriller, you have to be scared, potentially running for your life. Every genre has its own set of rules. But when you're writing general fiction or even a character who's not the main ones, maybe it's the secondary character, and that's the letter the point of view you're going through. What sounds right for that character? Are they bitter at the end of the journey? Are they happy at the end of the journey? Are they unsettled? You know, write those versions and you get deeper into feeling who this character is and how they're going to react. Okay. So, choosing a state in time, you know, what is that state in time? The emotional state, the tone, and the hints are the hints of what you believe could happen or the events what have happened are the two are the main things for letters. All right, so let's bring it all together. Once again, this is a personal exploration for you. You are writing things down or you're texting things, you're typing things, but there's a physical record somewhere. It might be digital, but it's something you can refer to and something you could do. It should work for fiction and nonfiction. You think prompts, you're doing experiments to discover what the story is. There are no wrong answers, no right answers. It's what feels right for that story and what technique feels right for you, because we are all different. Our minds work differently. That's why these are some of my favorite ways to figure things out. And you can mix and match. You can combine them together. This is your choices of how things should work, how you want to display, but it's going to make you journal to get your ideas out. And once again, the 5 whys, mind mapping, the core stories, letters, this gets the story out of your head and onto the page. It's your process. You get to do whatever you want to do. Now, if you write 100 words per day, okay, 100 words per day, you'll have a novella in a year. You'll have that novel done in 2 years. If you bump it up to 500 words a day, not even saying good ones, but 500 a day, you'll be at novel length in 5 months. I personally write the whole book. I don't edit. I write it out. And then I go back and layer. And for me, I'm long-winded, so that first version of the book is a third of the word count. So if it's supposed to be 60,000 words, then the first time I write that book is 20,000. Because I know by the time I go back in and add in-depth character, the settings, the scenes, the history or whatever else I have to add to make the story complete, I'll be at word count at the end of the third or fourth pass through that story. But if you think your word count, pro tip, if you think your word count is 60,000 words and that first version is 60,000 words, you overwrote. Because editing, you need to refine it. you need to add to it, and you will see things when you step away from the book that you know you're going to have to go back and revise because you want the best version of your story. But this shows you dedication and journaling every single day will get the book out of your head and onto paper. All right. Here's what I promised. Today's handout. Absolutely. Thank you, Serena. She's just put it in the chat for everybody. But it's got all the examples, all the wordiness, everything that you guys need. There, I always writing. People always ask me what are the books that mean the most to me. That's going to be in your packet handout. These are some of the books that have helped me. Beginnings, Middles, and Ends, I Cannot Stress by Nancy Kress is one of the best books ever to help you get through. Okay. All right, it's question time. We got any questions?
You guys can put it in chat, or if you want to unmute and just ask your question directly.
Don't be shy. Do you consider journaling as part of your daily work? Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Any word I do is part of my daily word count because people feel, I don't know about you, but I feel guilty when I set a goal and I don't do it. But um and then the more guilt you have, the least likely you're going to jump back in. So I give myself credit for anything. So if I'm just typing little random notes, that's part of my word count. You've got to be productive and you get over the hurdle and committing to daily doing something. So yeah, journaling is part of it, actually writing, and I try not to edit what I've written until I'm doing that next loop. It gets so bad that even though I know, okay, this is really bad. This is Vanessaism. I like to look at my word count. So even though I know a chapter or a scene is not going to work, I leave it in there and just type in the Scrivener folder. This scene is not going to work, but I don't want to mess the word count up because it does stuff for me mentally. I want to see it keep going, knowing it's going to go away. I just hate going backwards, but that's just a Vanessaism. All right. Would it be good practice to pull things 4-item prompts at one point and then go back? Yes, yes, and triple yes. These are to get it out of your head, but once it's on that page, you more synapses are going to start firing. You're going to get more layers of story. And for me, I do all of those techniques, but I always end up at the very end. The last thing I do before I start writing is the beliefs, relationship, um, goals, beliefs, relationship, and lies. That's for every character. I do that before I get started, so I know where I'm heading with these people. But yeah, I would go back, look at them because you'll get new ideas. And one day you might be rushing and putting things down. It won't make sense to you until that third time you look at the page. So these are another journal. You keep your journal with you. Keep them with you and go back and look at things. Um, this somebody asked, and this is one of the hard ones. Can journaling help you decide where to start your story or where to go? No, the book. When you write the book out for Queen of Exiles, the third chapter became the first chapter. So in Queen of Exiles, this is about Marie Covidad Christophe. She's the Queen of Haiti. And the third chapter, she's in London. She's in exile. And she smuggled jewels out of the kingdom. And a maid in the hotel steals the jewels. The editors, when they were reading it, they were like, we were so hung and hooked on this woman's story that this should be the first one. Because like when you if you read it chronologically, I started with her and the husband building the kingdom, and we were going back between this time frame of 1822, where she's in London, and then 1811 when she's building the kingdom with her husband, right? I started with her building the kingdom. So the first two chapters are building kingdom, and the third one you end up seeing this thing in London. And so we just reversed the orders and put that near the front, because that's the cement that makes you go, I'm locked in. So for me, it's different with everyone. Sometimes you can kind of tell. Sometimes, if you're new to writing, you might not be able to tell. Sometimes, Queen of Exile was probably my 24th book. I couldn't tell. I just wrote, and it sounded great to me, and it was working. Other people looking at a book were like, this is where the book should start, and they're absolutely right. So knowing where to start is hard. Um, but that should not stop you. Right. You can go back and look at it, and then you're gonna pick a point that has tension, that makes you feel for that character, because at the end of that chapter, you can't go, so what? Sometimes when you do chronological, it's kind of like, yeah, okay, they got up, they ate breakfast. So what? Why do I care about that person? But oh my gosh, she's in London. The kingdom has fallen, and all the money that they were going to live their lives with is gone. Oh my gosh, I got to know what's happening. That's so much stronger than, hey, honey, I need to build a kingdom. And you're my queen, by the way. I thought that was great. But the more impactful beginning that makes you hooked, that makes you continue to change that page, is, how is she going to survive this? An aside, it's been fun seeing you grow. Oh, thank you, Shannon. Actually, I didn't win Golden Heart. I think I finaled or something. I didn't win. But it's been a fun journey. The first book was traditionally published. Books 2 through 17 were independently published, because there was a confusion in traditional publishing whether people would buy books that had the majority characters, or the characters of power of being characters of color in the Regency era, because before that, you really didn't see that. And so to prove the point, I went indie, and I gained a following. So thank you, Shannon, and everybody who have read my books and read me and just blew me on. Books 17 through now 29 have been traditionally published. And the expansion of just doing historical romance to being able to do historical mystery, and historical fiction, like Fire, Sword, and Seed comes out in January. This is the 1600s, pirate women in the Caribbean. I mean, come on now, guys. That's some fun, right? To be able to research that, and to be able to bring these characters to life, was amazing. By the way, 1600s is a completely insane. Piracy is legal. 1700s, it's illegal. But in 1600, I'm just saying, Fire, Sword, and Sea, January 13th. You heard it from me. Uh, Thank you, Leo. I love y'all get a if you follow me on the social medias, you get snippets of my life. You get all these kind of interesting things. So you'll see me cooking, you'll see dramas. Like I said, now I've got this podcast for the written essays on Substack, but now I think you can get it YouTube, you can get it iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts. So you get an essay for me, where my commitment has been every Tuesday you get fresh manna. So it's like, what is affecting me? What am I thinking of? Written as an essay, about 1,000-word essay. So I write a lot, just in case y'all didn't figure that piece out. I like to write, and if I can, anything I've given you guys today to help you guys get writing, I'm very excited for that.
Thank you for that,
Do we have?
Vanessa. Oh, we're getting a lot of thank yous in chat.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. And once again, you guys have the link. You're now one of my students. If you have questions, you can email me on my website. There's a what one is where you can send questions. You might get an answer at 2 a.m. in the morning, but hey, we're among friends here.
Thank you, Vanessa. And thank you, everyone, for joining us on this Saturday. This was a wonderful workshop. Thank you for giving us all those techniques and a place to start with writing.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Everyone, I hope you enjoy the rest of your Saturday. This is being recorded, so just so you know, you will get a link to the recording from me. I'll email that out to you guys as soon as it renders through Zoom. All right, you guys have a great weekend. Next weekend, we're going to be back with Christina Diaz-Gonzalez. She is going to be talking about the writer's journey, taking us from idea all the way to book launch. So I hope I get a chance to see you guys again. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, everyone.
Bye.